All right, good morning, everyone. Thanks for joining us for another Daily Highlights with myself, Graham Holmes, and Dr. Stephanie Taylor.
Good morning.
Today, we're going to go over how humidification affects our largest organ, our skin. So, Stephanie, I'll pass it over to you, and you can look into all of the different ways that having proper humidified air really affects us here.
Well, thank you, Graham. Good morning, everyone. So we've been talking a lot about the respiratory system as humidity or lack of humidity affects our airways and our lungs, which clearly we're concerned about given COVID-19. But another organ that's very much affected by dry air or properly humidified air is our skin. And like Graham just said, our skin is our largest organ, and it also interfaces with the environment. So if you have nice, well-hydrated skin, both from the proper humidity, not just from lotions, but from humidity, the biopsy would look like the upper right, where you can see a hair follicle going from the dermal layer up through the epidermis. And the blue arrows show that, interestingly, when your skin is well moisturized, you actually control ongoing moisture loss. So your skin regulates how much evaporation occurs from your body into the air. And then in the picture below the drawing, you see immunofluorescent staining of a skin biopsy. And the red part is your epidermis, and then the purple dots underneath are in your dermis. And the point of what I'm trying to show there is that you have, with well moisturized skin, you have healthy demarcations between the epidermis and the dermis. So the layers are maintained and they're intact. Now let's take a look at what happens when your skin becomes dry. So next slide. So everyone's probably who flies has had the sensation of what happens to your skin after a couple hours in a dry airplane, or in the wintertime in a cold climate. So we can see and experience macroscopic cracking in our skin, and there's a huge cosmetic industry around trying to prevent that with lotion or cover it up with makeup. And you can see in the drawing in the upper right that when you have dry skin, and this almost seems paradoxical, but your epidermis is not as protective, and so you can have more moisture loss from already dry skin. That's not good. And underneath the drawing, and this is really important, and it's important now while we're worried about infections, those little purple dots that you see kind of throughout that picture are actually the nuclei of inflammatory cells. So when your skin is dry, even though the only thing you may feel are cracked cuticles or some itchiness, you actually have inflammatory cells that are coming from your bloodstream and from deeper tissues and populating your dermis. So your skin is in a state of sort of chronic mild inflammation when it's dry and when it's exposed to UVB. So that's not a healthy state that you want your skin to be in. And furthermore, in the next slide, and so this is really interesting, and this is somewhat new information. When your skin is dry, even tiny microscopic cracks that you can't see, this isn't like one of those painful things you get in the winter, but a microscopic crack in your skin allows proteins or microbes to get into a deeper layer of your skin. And what happens when that occurs is that your inflammatory cells, all of those purple dots that we saw in the previous slide, they begin to release inflammatory signals. And, and then in the next slide, so what are the consequences of those inflammatory signals? So we now know that when your skin is dry or exposed to UVB, we can actually produce glucocorticoids from our skin. So if you're feeling stressed, if you're stressed because you've been on lockdown for too long, you're worried about the economy, your brain is producing stress hormones. So your brain triggers the release of hormones from your adrenal cortex, which is a little organ over your kidneys. We used to think that our adrenal cortex was a primary site of cortisone production in our body. We now know that your skin produces about 50% of the amount of cortisol that your adrenal glands can. So what does this mean? It means that when your skin is dry, you have more inflammation and you're producing cortisol from your skin. And over time, that interferes with your sleep and it leads to a state of mild immunosuppression. So putting this together, dry air, skin inflammation, mild immunosuppression. You don't want to be immunocompromised ever, but especially now. So this is like a whole nother way that dry air or properly humidified air can affect us. So next slide. And clearly, if you're one of those people who lives with dogs or cats or other animals, our dogs get dry skin, they scratch, they shed more, you pet them and you give them a shock. If you've humidified your air 40 to 60%, you don't get as much shedding, your dog's skin isn't as dry, and you don't shock them every time you pet them. So, Graham?
Yeah, so just in conclusion, it's another reason to manage your humidity between 40 and 60%. So it promotes healthy skin and reduces that cortisol buildup and those stress levels, as well as it promotes a healthy immune system.
Oh, and one more thing I just wanted to say. I was reading about this right before this video clip. There's no sign that COVID-19 gets into our system through our skin. If you touch something that's contaminated and then touch your eyes, your nose, your mouth, you can obviously contract the disease that way. But even if you have inflammation or eczema, COVID-19 does not penetrate normal skin.
Oh, well, that's a relief for sure.
Yeah.
Last thing I want to promote here is Stephanie and I and Tom Klein, our East Coast regional sales manager for the United States. We've been doing a series of webinars for different areas. If you're an agent of Condair's and you'd like to promote to customers, feel free to reach out to your regional sales manager, and we can organize time for Stephanie and I to come and give the full promotion on why to humidify for building occupants. At the same time, we'll give your customers or new agents that are new employees of yours a rundown and an introduction to all of Condair's product line. And then usually we have a short Q&A at the end. Additionally, for this, we provide a certificate for attending. So that can be used to apply for professional development hours. And this can be done all across the United States and Canada. So if you're not an agent of ours, but you'd like to have this topic shown to yourself or colleagues that you know, or other people that you may think would find it interesting or are concerned about this topic, feel free to find your local agent on Condair's website, get in contact with them, and then we'll be able to set up a webinar for you as well. Thanks for joining us today.
Thank you, everyone.
And see you Friday.
Have a good day.